We hear a lot of perspectives on the Mankind podcast. Inclusion of a guest is not an endorsement of their views, and the opinions expressed here do not always represent the mission or values of the Mankind Project USA.
Looks like the rain has gone.
G'day and welcome to another recording of the Mankind Podcast, the show where we break the molds of modern manhood to prove there's more than one way to be a man. If this is your first time joining us, this is the show where men come to take their masks off and have real conversations about the real topics that are on our minds and on our hearts, the things that are being debated on the news, the things that are being fought over in the streets. This is the place where we come together, put aside our differences, and work together as men to find those solutions. Today is a special episode because we are joined in this introduction by Paul Newell, my friend, my brother, my host at arms here with the show. You're going to be hearing a new voice going forward, a more diverse range of experiences and voices as we move forward with this podcast. So Paul, take a moment to introduce yourself, my friend.
Bless up, Brandon. Thank you for having me on this intro, and I'm looking forward to being on the podcast. My name is Paul Newell. I am a coach, a well-being guide for men, and I was initiated with the Mankind Project in 2014. And my passion is supporting others to get to their best self. So being a part of this, man, I'm amped, man. I'm excited.
I'm excited.
Let's do it.
I'm excited to have you here, man. This is going to be a lot of fun going forward. I'm grateful to have had this time as the sole host of the show, but going forward, there's going to be a couple more voices that are going to be having and leading these conversations. But
nice.
Today, we want to introduce you, the listener, to a conversation that I had with a guy by the name of Drew Manning. I had it with him back in early 2020. So just for context, early 2020, just at the beginning of the pandemic. And I think you're really going to love this interview if you're listening right now. If you've been having conversations about authenticity and where are the lines drawn with being vulnerable. We talk a lot about masks, the masks that we wear to protect ourselves, and how those masks, when they're thick, can really get in the way of true connection with others. We also talk about the result of those masks, true tragedy. And for those that you might have heard of Drew Manning, he's the fit to fat to fit guy. He was the dude who gained 70 pounds to better empathize and understand his clients and the people that he was working with. And just recently, since we've done the podcast, he's done it again. Crazy bugger. Turning 40. He's like, I'm going to do it again because men in their 40s, I need to better understand and empathize with them too. Kind of masochistic in my mind. Anywho, Paul,
bless up to him.
Yeah, bless up to him. Paul, you had a chance to listen to the interview, mate. What are some of your takeaways?
Oh, man. Well, I as a trainer as well, I've been doing this for 20 years and supporting people. I really dig what this guy is about. I dig his story. I dig what he's talking about. And especially, as I was saying before we got on, I appreciate his authenticity and his transparency. And I think that the people that listen to this podcast are going to understand that there's more to fitness and well-being than that crap you see on Instagram and the six-pack abs. And I dig what he talks about. And I love his story. He shares it. He puts it all on the line. And I'm a fan. I'm a fan of him right now. I think I have a little crush on him too. I'm going to be honest with you. All right. Listen, man, that's my dude.
I'll tell you what, the man crush is real on this end too. You guys are going to see Drew. And, I remember when I knew of Drew previously because he's very well known in the fitness space and me having come from that space. And I saw him on the news when he did his 70-pound weight gain. But when I met him in person, good looking, ripped, handsome, successful. And when I went up to talk to him and introduce him and to come on the show, just nothing but like the biggest sweetheart you've ever met in your life. I mean,
Sweet. There
are people that talk about vulnerability, and then there are those that have already integrated it into their lives. And
oh yeah,
he's a great model.
And you can hear it.
Oh, you can.
Yeah, you can hear it in the interview. I mean, like, I'm so happy for the people that are about to listen to this. Man,
I mean,
so happy for them.
what he went through growing up through his faith, and that living that dichotomy of, well, this is what my preacher and the leaders in my church are saying what I need to be doing, but I'm watching pornography over here, a sin that's next to murder in that faith. And it goes into his affair with his wife and all sorts of stuff. So I think you're really going to like a really brave and bold example of a man who's willing to take that mask off, shed the skin, and just go, here is me and all of my beauty and the nastiness and everything in between. So I think you guys are going to have a lot of fun with this one. Paul, any final comments, mate?
Man, enjoy this journey that he's taking you on, because Drew lays out the whole shebang-a-bang on this one, man. It's a freaking good look. It's a real good look, man. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. Great job on that interview.
Oh, cheers, brother. Well, guys, you're going to get to know Paul a lot more going forward. Episode 40, which comes out week after this one being dropped, it's going to be a group conversation between him, myself, and Boyce Hodgson. We're going to be diving into how your story colors your world. It's a big one. So that's just a little tease for next week. But for this week, enjoy this interview with Drew Manning. So, mate, just for the Mankind Project community and the audience, mate, just give us a little bit of a sneak peek into the life of Drew Manning.
Yeah, so, well, most people know me as the Fit to Fat to Fit guy, which happened back in 2011, which was a crazy experiment I did, right? I put on 75 pounds in 6 months. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done. The reason I did that was to kind of gain a different or a better understanding for me of what it was like to be overweight for the first time in my life. Because here I was, someone who grew up in a family of 11 brothers and sisters. I played football. I wrestled. I was always in shape, and I became a personal trainer. Mm-hmm. And then I would train people who weren't in shape their entire life. And so there was a disconnect. And so that's kind of where my story started. I mean, obviously there's a lot of, connections to me, the way I grew up, my perception of the culture I grew up in that affected, my perception at that time. And so, but Fit to Fat to Fit was something I did that was definitely, definitely attention grabbing and was a little bit crazy. I'm not going to lie, but I'm glad I survived it. And I came out of it more empathetic and a better understanding for myself of what it's like to be overweight. And so, right. That's where, I wrote my book. I created my own TV show here in the US where I put other trainers through this process just because I learned the power of empathy. And empathy is something this world needs more of. And definitely we need more of it in the fitness industry.
There's the thing that's kind of alive in me when I hear you talk about that experience of kind of the empathy. To me, that just sounds like bridging the gap, because like I can imagine you're being an athlete your whole life. It's very easy to go, oh, well, let's talk about your macros. Let's talk about all the things that you can do to lose weight, when you're speaking to your clients. But my personal belief of why so many people yo-yo in their weight loss experiences is because they don't know how to be in the moment from the beginning of the journey to the end. It's like, okay, well, now you've achieved the goal. They think, oh, do I have to keep doing this? And it's like, I don't think it's about what you have to do. I think more than anything, it's how to be present in the moment. And something I know you talk about a lot is the power of self-love through that process. How much do you feel that plays into the transformation experience? And what is the difference that you saw with the results of your clients pre-2011 to today?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And this whole journey from Fit to Fit to discovery of self-love for myself, there's another personal story that we can get into a little bit later of how I finally discovered the power of self-love. But definitely one of the biggest things I've noticed is pre-2011, I did focus on the physical, like you talked about, macros, calories, workouts, supplements, how to help people look good, how to help people get skinny, get a six-pack, because I figured, hey, that's what this is all about. That's why we're doing this, right? That's why we're exercising. That's why we're eating healthy, is so we look good. But I didn't realize that it's more than that. It's more powerful than that until post-2011, when I understood the mental and emotional side of transformation a lot better. I understood how powerful the emotional connection to food is and how we distract ourselves with food or sex or alcohol or drugs. And food is just one of those things that is legal and it's convenient and it tastes really good and it's cheaper than than real food. And so I feel like it's this uphill battle with people trying to transform, because I think people's perception of health and fitness is, hey, I need to look this way, like they see on social media or on TV with celebrities or athletes, in order to be successful. And if I don't, then I'm a failure. And society has told me that since I was a kid, whether you got made fun of or teased because your body was this or that. And so you buy into that myth, you buy into that lie, thinking, well, I don't like getting made fun of, I don't like getting teased, so therefore my value of my self-image is my body image. Yeah. And then that's where people, their perception starts to shift, and they think to be successful, they have to look a certain way. Otherwise, they're not successful. And so that's why they do these crash diets, to look a certain way, thinking, once I get this body, then I'll like myself. Other people will like me, and it's just like money, right? Once I get rich, all my problems will go away. But we learn there's a lot of miserable rich people. There's a lot of miserable people with six-pack abs. So that's not the key. That's not the, if you just focus on the process, like you mentioned, the just being present, focus on the process, falling in love with the process, and the results, they take care of themselves over time.
Yeah. There's something to be said in a big way. I think it's very natural because we live in such an express society. You want something, you order on Amazon, it's there the next day, right? Ubers come to us, dry cleaning gets delivered to us, right? And I believe we're so used to snapping our fingers and having things happen that it's very natural to think that, I've been eating so healthy the past 3 days and I don't see any changes in the mirror. So I might relapse. Some old emotions might kick up. And having been a part of the fitness industry myself, I was asking that question too in the beginning. I'm like, they're getting to the top of the mountain, but they're dragging everything up with them. You don't leave it at the base unless you are actually aware and work on some of the reasons, or ask the questions, why was I in that state? What led to that? Like, what did my parents teach me about nutrition or habits, or what was the impact of my schooling experience to how I treat my body? Or the bigger question is, am I actively loving myself with my behaviors and habits? Or am I actually eating this to escape this feeling?
Yeah.
Or not taking care of myself because I don't feel like I want to invest in myself because I don't feel worthy.
Yeah.
Right.
I think a lot of it comes down to what you're talking about, which is self-awareness, right? Once we become more self-aware, we start to ask ourselves these questions. And then that's really, honestly, half the battle. Yeah. If you're at least aware in the moment of why you're doing what you're doing, then you have more control over your decisions, versus when we are reactionary and we're not aware, we're just reacting to stress, to life, and we're stuffing our face with this or that to distract ourselves. We're not aware in the moment, and therefore we just react because we've been programmed that way for so long. The key, the true key to a lifestyle change is self-awareness. So once you're aware in the moment, what happens is you become the observer of your thoughts rather than them becoming your thoughts. Yeah. So now you can sit back and observe as your mind is going with all, a million miles a minute, thinking, okay, I'm stressed out. This food looks good. This drink looks good. This drug would make me feel good. That would be a good distraction. And then all you're doing is just observing. You're not reacting, but you can thoughtfully respond now, because you can see it like a movie playing in front of you. All these things happening. You're like, man, okay, what character do I want to be in this moment? Yeah. And now you have the ability to choose. Versus before, when you don't have that self-awareness, you are just reacting. You're like, man, what did I just do? Did I just eat 6 donuts? You know what I'm saying? Like, it's crazy. You wait till afterwards to kind of assess the situation versus being present in the moment. That's the key to change.
I couldn't agree more. I found myself only just like the other day. I myself have gone through a bit of a transition in the past 8 weeks after, a relationship ending and transitioning. And I found myself like just because I have a great support network within this community, within the Mankind Project and outside, to remind me of like, you're going to want to numb. You're going to want to numb this. And I even caught myself the other day, like, like pulling up my phone and like looking for some pornography just to like escape and get away. Yeah. And then, it's inevitable. At the end of all that, it's like, oh, what have I done? And I've done that where I've looked at a plate and just gone, what did I even eat?
Yes.
Like what was even on that plate? Like I wasn't even present with it. I wasn't present with the process of how that food ended up on my plate. So yeah, I'm right there with you, Matt. I believe that awareness is that key. And so I'm curious, how do you have that conversation with Gen Pop, general population that have been programmed to think a certain way, that fats are the devil and sugar is it's just something that it's in there. We just got to accept that it's in there. How do you have that conversation with so many that are kind of hardwired and programmed?
Yeah, that's a good question. In my new book, Complete Keto, which is a keto approach, it's a keto book, it's a keto diet. I like to take a lot of the things that I've done personally that have helped me develop that, because I haven't always had that ability to be self-aware in the moment and be present and thoughtfully respond instead of react. It's taken me, years to learn, not so much to learn how to do this, but almost unlearn everything I thought was the way to think. Right.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's taking little things like meditation, for example, and that seems so taboo to us here in the Western culture, to practice. Like that's for monks, that's not what we do here.
Get out your drum and your bong.
Exactly. And go to a mountain and just, think about nothing like that. That's what our perception is. Yeah. But once I learned the power of it, even just 10 minutes a day, totally transformed my perception of my situation. Because I was like, okay, now I'm in control because I'm becoming the observer of my thoughts. And then the second thing would be positive affirmations. I think a lot of men out there, when we think of the words positive affirmations, now growing up here in the U.S., there's a TV show called Saturday Night Live, and there's this skit with this guy named Stuart Smalley, and he would make fun of this psychiatrist who would just say, I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and doggone it, people like me. And it was just super corny, and that was my perception. Even like to today, I'm like, positive affirmations makes me think of this corny skit on the Saturday Night Live, and it seems super cheesy, but the power of saying words out loud to yourself about yourself, especially words that you've probably never heard as a man. I've never heard the words uttered to me. I'm proud of who you've become. You are worthy. You are worth it. You're a good man. You're a good dad. You're these words that I didn't grow up hearing a whole lot. Yeah. There's power in those words when you say them to yourself about yourself, especially standing in front of a mirror. Every man needs to hear those words, whether it's from him or from someone else, but you need to hear those words out loud. And so saying positive affirmations on a daily basis. And then the third thing I would say would be a journaling / gratitude list. Yeah. And what that does is it allows you to put those thoughts, it forces you to be aware of, okay, what am I thinking in those moments, right? And writing those thoughts down. Like yesterday I ate 6 donuts. I wasn't even thinking. Before I know it, I ate 6 donuts. But I remember before that, my kids, my kid threw a tantrum, and my wife was upset at me all day because of finances, and my boss was annoying me. And then those were triggers. And you start to realize, you're starting to connect those dots, thinking, oh, wow, okay, this is what my triggers are. Now that builds that self-awareness. So those are the things I talk about in my book that I put in there like homework. Just as important as meal plans, just as important as workouts and supplements and sleep, are these little things on the mental and emotional side that really help people build that self-awareness. And so that's my belief, because that's what's helped me and so many other people.
And I believe that's a reflection of your process, right? Your process to transformation, because it's not you're overweight, let's lose 10 pounds, then you'll be happy. It's like, okay, well, what environment do you live in? What does eyes open to eyes closed look like for you? What happens in those 18 hours? And helping them identify that, okay, well, so you're 20 days in your program and you've cheated, and you feel a lot of shame, and you're coming to me feeling like I'm going to be disappointed and that you've let me down. And I'm sure you've had this conversation so many times, right? Yeah. And so they're going, I feel like I've let you down, so I'm just going to disappear and hopefully you don't see me. And to help them understand, like, well, let's look at what happened. Let's trace it back. And then it gives them the ability to go, not only prevent the action or do their best to be aware of the action, but be aware of what set up the action, set up the 6 donuts, and to go, oh, well, okay. So if I hang around with my workmates when they sit around the coffee pot and the cookie jar, or if I go to the pub with my mates, and that usually turns into 6 beers later.
Yep.
Thinking about the environment as a whole. And so how often are you having the conversation around kind of self-love and self-awareness with blokes that you train, and how soon are you having that conversation? Is it something that you feel like you got to ease into, or is that something that from the beginning they're kind of preparing themselves to expect that conversation?
I think a lot of people, now that they know me, they know who I am. It's not like I'm a personal trainer that trains people in the gym and they have no idea who I am. I really don't work with a lot of one-on-one clients, but I think people know they consume my content on social media. So they kind of know that my message is more than just, 6-pack abs and the keto diet. So I think people are aware that I have something more to offer them. Otherwise, they wouldn't be following me, most likely. And so, but for some people, we do need to ease into it. If I start talking about self-love and meditation and positive affirmations, like most men out there, that's very new for them.
Yeah.
So you do have to ease into it. Just like with any diet, like with keto, it's super easy to just say, hey, stop eating carbs. Don't, stop buying, non-organic produce, and stop buying non-grass-fed meats and things like that. You can't always get someone to go from A to Z. But if you get them to go from A to B, B to C, C to D, eventually it'll catch on with the importance of keep moving forward. So that's what I've learned over the years. And like you mentioned in the beginning, you've learned this from your personal story. I really have. And a lot of people don't know this about Fit to Fat to Fit because they just see what they see on social media. They just see the TV show, the book, all the TV shows that I went on.
An 8-pack. Jacked.
Yeah, exactly. And like, oh, he must be happy. He must have it all put together. And they don't realize that every single person out there is going through some type of battle, internal battle, where they're not feeling good enough. They feel like they're in imposter syndrome. Guilt and shame consume them, especially men. The guilt, the shame consume them. And so they put on a mask. They wear a mask. I've worn a mask my whole life. I've worn a mask, throughout my first marriage, going through my divorce, because we are on these TV shows, but we'd go home and cry ourselves to sleep, or my ex-wife would cry herself to sleep because we had to put on this face like everything's okay, and it drains your soul. It really does, and that's why it's so important to learn how to take off that mask, but it's so hard because society doesn't let you do it easily. The universe doesn't let you do it easily. There's going to be some scary moments. It's going to take some serious courage and some serious bravery to be able to take off that mask and show people like, hey, this is me. Just like it would be scary to walk outside naked and everyone see you. It's a similar situation. It'd be really scary to go out in public, especially in the public eye, and say, here I am. And not care about the judgment. So it took me going through hitting rock bottom, and then from there being humble enough to at least wanting to improve myself and wanting to show up as the best version of myself I could be, because I had 2 daughters that even though I failed at my marriage, I didn't want to fail them as a dad. And that was my new purpose. That was my new purpose in life. And so that's what kept me going forward to say, okay, I could give up and play the victim mentality the rest of my life and blame other people for this or that. Or I could own my story and show up and put in the work to become the best version of myself for my daughters so that I could pay it on to the next generation.
And that's a... What we appreciate a lot in the Mankind Project, and something I appreciate is knowing that there are people out there watching what we're doing, not to the degree that we may think, especially those of us, i.e. me, that get stuck in imposter syndrome. The ones that matter are watching. And that might be 3 people. That might be 2 little girls. That might be, maybe 10 or whatever that circle is. But identifying like how I turn up today, even in silence, even without explicitly telling you what's going on. And even look at a 1-year-old or a 2-year-old that maybe might not be able to comprehend the full, language that we're sharing. They just absorb. Whenever they're in our presence and our energy, they absorb that. And for you to have consciousness awareness around that to change the purpose of how I turn up today will have a direct impact, not just on my life, but the lives of those around me. I believe is just another level up of that self-awareness we're talking about.
If you're enjoying the Mankind podcast, how about taking another step? This one takes some courage, and you've got it. Check out the Men's Work Introduction. It's 3 sessions over 3 weeks. New sessions start every month, and we even have a cohort tailored to LGBTQ men, which you can learn more about at bit.ly/menswork2.
Now, you and I met at the gym. You know, we trained at the same gym. I did the taboo thing, and I waited till he was warming down. So I wasn't going to jump up on the treadmill next to him being like, "Hey, mate, how you going?" You know. But I actually first became aware of Drew first, you know, when it went viral on social media when he gained 75 pounds and lost it again to build that bridge of empathy and connection with his clients. But actually, I went to a workshop with an incredible woman named Catherine Dixon, And Catherine is a student of Byron Katie's, and she's a life coach. Her company's called Clarity Coaching, and the workshop was just fantastic. I mean, I'm a geek when it comes to those kind of workshops, and just the work that she did and the way that she held space was fantastic. And I told her a little bit of my story, and she said, "Listen to the episode where I'm on the Fit to Fat to Fit experience with Drew Manning," and I listened to it, and I went, "Man." I said, this is the kind of man that we need in this position, right? Doing what you're doing, having the conversations that you're having. And in that podcast, you talk about, you know, the time that you maybe for the first time really opened yourself up to being naked in a vulnerability sense. So mate, tell us a little bit about that experience of what it was like to finally touch that the pain or the grief or the shame or whatever was going on, and to finally let it out.
Yeah, man, that was such a transformational moment of my life. And I talk about this in great detail on my podcast, episode 100, if you want to listen to the full 45-minute episode. But to kind of summarize it in a nutshell, a lot of it had to do with my perception of the way I was raised and my perception of the culture of the religion I grew up in, the culture of my family, the culture of sports. I felt like I had to be perfect, at least on the outside, for my leaders, my parents, my coaches. Otherwise, if I wasn't perfect, I feel like there was always some type of punishment involved. So whether it was at church, there was a sin. If I sinned, there was a punishment that came with that sin. If I got in trouble at home, there was a punishment. You know, I got spanked or I got grounded. So same thing with sports. You know, if I missed a tackle, it was push-up. So man, one, I didn't want to mess up. I didn't want to screw up or have weaknesses, because I hated that feeling. I hated the feeling of not being perfect. And two, I hated being punished so much to the point where I figured in my head, like to protect myself, I would just lie about things. Yeah. I would lie so that people thought I was perfect on the outside. So I would start lying to my church leaders. I would start lying to myself. I would start lying to my family and my friends so that I didn't have a punishment. And people thought I was perfect. And I was like, that's the way I'm going to protect myself, preserve myself growing up in this world, was to do that. And so the lies just piled up and piled up and piled up until eventually, you know, the lies I couldn't hide anymore. And I got discovered. And what I mean by that is, you know, growing up, first of all, watching pornography was something that was demonized in my religion. It was something so evil. It was a sin next to murder. That's how serious it was in my mind, that this is so horrible and disgusting, and you are horrible and disgusting. And the shame just consumed me to the point where I never talked about it. Because if I never talked about it, then I wouldn't have to deal with any punishments or any judgment from other people. So I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to hide this from everyone. Yeah. And so I decided to do that. And then in 2009, I ended up having an affair and the reason that happened was because my whole life I saw myself as a failure. On the inside. I knew that I was screwing up my entire life. And when you see yourself as a failure, you tend to self-sabotage in moments. You do failure-like things. And so in the moment, I was like, well, you're already worthless. You already messed up. Why not go ahead and do this thing that's going to make it even worse? And people do this in all forms of their life, whether it's with their diet, where they're like, I'm having a sad day. I'm going to self-sabotage and just eat this to comfort me in the moment or give me some type of pleasure in the moment. And so we all do this in different forms, but for me, it took the form of porn, an affair, and hiding it from my wife. And so basically what had happened was I hid it, but eventually it got discovered. Eventually I hit rock bottom. And it was in that moment where, one, I was so devastated and so ashamed, because when shame consumes you, you don't want anyone to find out about it. If someone finds out about it, your life's over. You're like,
Yep.
I'm done. Never talking to family again. I'll never have any friends again. I'll never date again. My life's over. And you tell yourself these stories, so you do anything to avoid being discovered until God or the universe or whoever made it so that I was discovered. And I'm so grateful for that now, because had that not happened, I would continue living this inauthentic life. And so that's why I'm grateful for everything that I went through. And that's what led me to Catherine Dixon, who was my life coach. And I agreed to see her. And when I saw her, that first session that we had, it was 3 hours of me crying like I've never cried before in my life. I've never cried so hard in my entire life. And she was the first person that taught me to learn how to love myself. And I had never learned that from any church leader, any family member. I never learned how to truly love myself. And once I learned self-love, I realized that my whole paradigm started shifting. Come operating out of a place of self-love, like, okay, I can move forward. There is hope again now that I've developed this self-love. And it didn't just happen instantly. I don't want you guys to think, oh, it happened instantly, my life was changed and all is well now. It was years and years of going through ups and downs, but eventually up and down, but the ups started to get higher than the downs. And that's how I started making progress. Exactly. And it was, the Loving What Is was the first book I read. And then I started working with Catherine. And then from there, read books by Brene Brown, Daring Greatly. I recommend it to all men out there. If you have not read Daring Greatly, that's a good place to start.
Fantastic.
Just to understand how guilt and shame consume you. And she talks a lot about stepping into the arena and having the courage to step into the arena. It's so scary to make that decision to step into the arena, because when you're in the arena, it feels like you're naked and everyone's just watching you, judging you, and throwing things at you. But what you learn is that no one's opinion outside the arena matters, because you're in the arena doing that work to improve yourself, to become a better version of yourself. And once you have that courage to own your story, embrace vulnerability as a strength, you start living an authentic life. And from there, life is so freeing. You realize, man, why didn't I do this earlier?
Yeah.
Man, I suffered for 35 years of my life because I was inauthentic. I didn't own my story. And once I stepped into the arena and owned my story, it was scary as hell. It was hard. But eventually, in the end, it's totally worth it.
Yeah, it's not the critical.
That's my story in a nutshell. There's a lot more to it, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. There's layers to this stuff, and something something I just want to share is, it's not the critic who counts, right?
Yep.
The man in the stands who wants to point out where you stumble, right? We can thank Teddy Roosevelt for that one, and it's Daring Greatly. I've just finished reading it for the first time. Everyone thought it was crazy that I hadn't read it sooner, and I agree, because my head exploded on multiple occasions. Talking about when it comes to sharing vulnerability, what does oversharing look like, and something I really respect. And I encourage everyone listening to this interview to check out episode 100 of your podcast from the Fit to Fat Fit experience, where you share your story. And I'm someone who's very guilty of oversharing. And what that leaves the people around me with is a lot of discomfort of, how do we deal with what's just been vomited up? And you took 3 years to really sit with it and do the work to best understand not only how the experience played out, the stories that were involved, but who you are as a man at the end of it all. And that's something that I really respect, and took some great lessons away from that. And something that I just want to speak to quickly, and we talked before about this express society that we live in, of we want everything fixed now, right? Your pipe bursts, you call a plumber, he comes in, fix it. Here she comes in, fix it. And so the work always continues. We say in MKP, the journey continues. And there's not going to come a point where any man should say, or woman should say, I'm fixed. Or, I don't have that problem anymore. You know, we talk a lot in this work about shadows, you know, that which I hide, repress, and deny. And at some point that, you know, which gets hidden, doesn't get healed, right? A lot of shame is hidden. But by actively sitting with it and going into the process of bringing it out and looking at it, we get an opportunity. We may never get rid of it, but an opportunity to shrink it down. You know, it may have been this huge festering tumor. We can bring it down to a marble, and rather than put it behind us, put it in front of us. And so to that, I want to ask you, Drew, to give us an opportunity, the Mankind Project community here, to get to know you better.
Yeah.
I would love to ask you, mate, you know, we talk about masks. What does the Drew Manning mask look like when you put it on?
Yeah.
And on the opposite token, what's it shielding? What's it hiding beneath that some people may not know or may not know what's going on for you right now?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'll say this. First of all, the mask I wear right now is a lot thinner than what the mask used to be.
Used to be caked on.
To be exactly so thick, you know, such armor, so protective of like, okay, can't let anyone in. So I will say that, and I think we all still wear a mask, like you mentioned before, when you were shared a vulnerable moment with us, where you like, you just the other day or week you distract yourself with pornography. I feel like sometimes when you listen to someone, like for example, Brene Brown, she's a perfect example. She's got it all figured out. She has all the tools in her tool belt to fix any kind of situation that is thrown at her. Yet she has her own therapist. She has her own coach, because she's just like all of us, where we still struggle. We still wear masks sometimes. And I love how open and honest she is. So here's mine that I still struggle with today, even though I have all these tools. I've read all these books. I've worked with all these life coaches. I've had all these amazing experiences in my life that have really transformed my perception of the situation I'm in. And yes, I have a lot more tools than I used to have. One of the masks I still wear nowadays is, even though I was married for 10 years, I've been divorced for 5 years. This is the first, over the past year, is the first time I've ever been in a relationship with a girl. I've been so full of fear about relationships up until recently that I've never seriously been able to overcome that fear, where I've been in a committed relationship. I've dated here and there, casually dated, but would never let anyone get too close to me because of that fear of like, hey, love's not enough. I don't trust love anymore because I was in love, and that wasn't enough to save my marriage. Even though I did what I did, there was still love there. It wasn't like I stopped loving my ex-wife. She stopped loving me, but love wasn't enough. So why get attached to someone if there's a high probability of it never working out? So in order to protect myself from that devastation and that pain that I've experienced before, I wouldn't allow myself to get attached to people. And this happened, just until this past year, where yes, I'm in a relationship, but I still have those fears. The thing that I've learned, so I do wear a mask sometimes where I'm like, yeah, I got things figured out. I know exactly how to help people and solve other people's problems, but here I am still letting fear direct my life. But here's the one turning point for me where, like I said, the mask is thinner. Even though those fears are still present for me, it's about taking baby steps, inches at a time forward, one step at a time. Okay, the fear's still there, but I'm going to go with this, even though it's scary. It's not like a big leap. It's a baby step. It's like an inch, like, okay, inch my way closer. Eventually I'm going to get there, but like, it's so slow. But for me, that's kind of the mask that I wear is I still have these fears about relationships, especially being a dad and having daughters. And, there's fears of, okay, what if they get attached and we break up and they're devastated and they hate me now? Or what if I have another kid? What if I get married again and I get divorced again and I have another kid, and then that kid doesn't have their dad, full time? And I've already done that to my daughters. There's all these fears of like, okay, what if? And so I haven't figured it out. I still haven't. All I know is that I am doing my best to take those baby steps forward, even with a little bit of a mask on from time to time, to show people like, hey, look, I got it figured out, and I've healed myself from my divorce. But in reality, I still don't have things figured out. I still need help. I go see a life coach. I go see a therapist.
Yeah.
I'm open to improving myself, and looking back and saying, you know what, I thought I had it figured out, but you know what, I still need some help, and I still need some things I got to work on. And so that's what I've learned is never be, and this is why I have a hard time trusting people who speak in absolutes, as if they figured it out, they know everything, and they're not open to anyone else's opinion. Is 10 years from now, you're going to look back on your life and realize, man, what was I thinking at that time? I had no idea. Like 10 years back before now, I would have never imagined I would be who I am today. Vulnerability to strength on my forearm, all these tattoos, out of my religion, drinking coffee, drinking alcohol, all reading books by Brene Brown. I'm like, there's no way that would be me. But here I am today. So 10 years from now, what experiences is life going to throw at me that's going to shift my perception, where I'm going to be like, you know what? I thought I had it figured out 10 years ago, but man, I'm so glad I had this experience and that experience to teach me something new. So I'm open to being wrong. So that's kind of how I show up, even though from time to time I still wear that mask.
Wow. Beautiful. Beautiful, mate. Thank you you can tell you've done work around that, because what you just shared really just followed the Four Heroes journey. Really, ties it all together. It wasn't, going into jargon or going into absolutes. Because, when we look at story, right, we look at the stories that we tell ourselves, they really are in essence absolutes. Oh, women are always like this, or I have done that work, right? We're just trying to put a full stop on something that really is still always going to be an open conversation in our heads and our hearts. And just before we wrap up, I want to ask you, for those watching, listening, that have been through the experiences of breakups, heartbreaks, breaking hearts, transitioning from out of relationships, transitioning into new relationships, you did a beautiful job of sharing your experience of what it's like to open yourself up again, to be vulnerable and to trust a relationship and all the variables. What is it that, your therapist or your coaches, or your consciousness is telling you right now in regards to leaning back into that fear inch by inch, into opening yourself to a relationship, being loved by another?
I think it's the bravery, in my opinion, of still progressing forward. So on my other arm, I have this word tattooed called Imua, I-M-U-A, which is a Hawaiian word for progressing forward, like the tip of a spear, constantly moving forward. And I feel like that's given me strength to move forward in those moments where in the past I let fear control me. So what I'm saying is the fear is still there, but I have the courage, I guess, to still move forward despite that. Because what I've learned is that you're never truly living life unless you allow love into your life. And love was something that I was like, you know what? Love is BS. It's a bunch of BS. Yeah, it works for some people, but maybe there's under a spell. And how many, happy, successful marriages do you know of nowadays? Very little. That
less
people
than 50%.
Yeah, but like truly happily married. I'm like, even the friends that I have that are married, I'm like, yeah, they're married, but I wouldn't call them happily married. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, so for me, I've learned that allowing love into your life again is a way to be more fulfilled. Because I think if you don't have love in your life, you can be fulfilled. But I feel like there's this extra piece of love that fills this gap that you can't achieve without love. Does that make sense? And so for me, like, that's what I've learned is like, all right, I'm still afraid, but I'm going to allow love into my life and start to trust it more and more and more. So people that have broken up or going through a transition, I would say this is that if you could learn how to shift your perception of life happening, instead of life happening to you, life happening for you, and what you can learn and how you can grow from each relationship that you're in, then I feel like you're baby stepping, inching forward to that place of allowing love back into your life again. And so that's kind of me speaking from my experience.
Beautiful. So just being open to the possibility of allowing and welcoming love into life, rather than going, didn't work for me, not happening. So many can come out of a breakup and go, nope, love's not my thing. Maybe mum and dad didn't model it either, and just like, no, it's just not my thing. That's for other people. But just at least saying, well, if I'm open, it may not happen tomorrow, but it may happen in the future, right? Baby step after baby step. And, this, and this is what we're looking for in the world as an organization, are men that are prepared and willing to say, I'm afraid. Yeah. I'm terrified. There's a lot of fear in this. And it opens up the conversations that I believe need to be had and need to start having. And Drew, I want to thank you for coming on and sharing, giving us a peek into your life and your world. We could have easily spoke about the incredible work that you're doing with your business and your company. And that's a conversation for another time. I'm grateful to have had this opportunity to really chat to you and for us to go beneath our masks and go there. And I'm sure many others are going to feel the same once they hear this. And for those that have joined us live, show some love in the comments below and show some of your love and appreciation for this great man joining us. Drew, one last question.
Yes, sir.
Mate, what are you grateful for in this moment?
Well, I'm grateful for this opportunity to be on a podcast with you, that we have this amazing technology to be able to connect for you in Australia, me in Salt Lake, hundreds or thousands of people, whoever is watching from all over the world, listening in one place. Like this information, back in the day, you would have had to go research or, go to the library or, this is amazing that we have this technology. So one, I'm grateful for that. Two, I'm grateful for being a dad. Like that's the biggest source of my joy in my life. And I'm grateful for overcoming fear. So I'm grateful for having fear, but I'm also grateful for knowing that it's not as scary in real life as it is in my head. I think people suffer 1,000 times more in their head of what it's going to be versus what it actually is.
This has been the Mankind Podcast, produced in association with the Mankind Project USA. I have been your host, Brandon Clift, and I personally want to thank our guests for joining us today and imparting their wisdom from their experiences in this amazing journey called life. And of course, I want to thank you, the listener, because through your attention and your support, you make it a heck of a lot easier for us to let men out there in the world know that they are not alone and that there is more than one way to be a man. Special thanks, of course, goes to my incredible team, Marketing and Communications Director Boyson Hodgson, producer and editor of this episode, Michael Russo, who makes me sound so much more intelligent than I actually am, so of course, special kudos goes there. And if you've been enjoying the music throughout this episode and all of our episodes, check out Jim, Donovan, and the Sun King Warriors. I have links to them in the show notes. Now, the fee for this episode is simple. If you found gold and insights that you believe could benefit your loved ones and those you care about, be sure to share it with them. And of course, remember that life doesn't happen to us, it happens for us, so long as we rip the pen out of fate's hand and become the author of our own story. So my friend, pick up the pen and we'll see you next week. Lots of love.